We've always had that moment where there's always something missing. And when, of course, usually it's a crucial piece. It means that they actually can't play with the toy because either it'll fall apart or they actually can't play the game. And it's just a nightmare, isn't it? Or perhaps you've had that jigsaw that you love to do. And you spent hours on it. And of course, you can't tell from the beginning whether there's a piece missing. It's only at the end. And you realize that all of a sudden, you can't complete the picture. There's a little piece in the corner that's always going to be empty. I know some of you are thinking, you spelled peace wrong. More pedantic amongst you. No, I haven't. Because in our reading we heard that Jesus would bring peace. He is the Prince of Peace. And yet as we look at our world, it's kind of missing, isn't it? You see what's happening all around the world in different countries, in different continents, even this week on East Bank Street with that terrible shooting. Where is the peace? If Jesus came to bring peace, where is it? It said in our reading that the government will be on his shoulders, and of the increase of his government, there will be no end. A legitimate question would be, when's it going to begin? Because you look at our world, and the one thing that it is not defined by is peace. There is no peace on earth. And every now and again there's a war or the threat of war, and commentators will say, this will be the war that ends all wars. They said that about World War II. Of course, you don't finish war by war. There is no war to end all wars. Some of you may remember John Lennon singing "War is Over," announcing "Give peace a chance." And there was hope in the 60s. I can just remember the 60s. Some of the younger people thinking, what, really? You're way older than that. But I can only just remember the 60s. I can only just remember John Lennon doing this kind of stuff in the early 70s. People have always had the hope of peace, but it's just never come. And so what do we make of Jesus claiming to be the Prince of Peace? Where does this fit into our experience of the world? Where does this fit into our experience of life? See, we're all waiting for his government to bring peace. And there are loads of people who just think, well, if only we had Christian governments, then it would all be fine. But history tells us that actually, if you have Christian governments, you just have the same kind of governments with non-Christians. Christian governments are no better than any other government because they are run by people. And so it's no good hoping for one political party or one Christian leader to come into place, that kind of Messiah figure who will bring peace. That's what they were hoping for back in Jesus' time. They were hoping for someone who would bring peace, who would get rid of the Roman oppressors, who would release Israel from oppression and set them into freedom. The longing for peace is deep within us and has been for centuries. And yet, it is so elusive. We don't find it. Where is it? And that, sadly, every Christian government that has existed in history has proved to be as violent as a non-Christian government. And perhaps you look at your own life, and you're aware of a lack of peace, especially in this run-up to Christmas. And this last week, my wife can get stressed. You may have kind of noticed she's a little bit high energy, a little bit hypertension. I can say that she's not here today. We'll cut it out of the recording, it'll be fine. This week, I've seen her stress levels reach new heights. It's been fantastic to watch. It really has. It's been a lot of fun. I just kind of feed it a little bit and encourage it. But you know what it's like at run up to Christmas. There's things to do, there's people to see, there's food to cook, there's presents to buy and wrap. There's the whole thing that we have to do. Just this very simple thing, where we're meant to be celebrating the coming of the Prince of Peace, the last thing we actually have is peace. And then you look at your life through the rest of your year, with all the things that go on in your life, the stresses, the strains, the anxieties. And you know that the last thing that you have most of the time is peace. Where is your peace? For most of us, we have a picture of our lives that is like a jigsaw with a piece missing. We have this perfect picture, and yet it's always incomplete. There's always something missing. There's always peace missing. And so we struggle and we strain and we fight against all the things that come our way. See, the missing piece is, in fact, Jesus. But it's not Jesus who will bring a government, who will sit on the throne, who will set up a parliament. The war to end all wars isn't some big fight between countries. It is the simple war for the human heart. See, we can set up every government structure and organization we could think imaginable, and it will not bring peace. Because the problem isn't outside of us, it is within us. The problem has always been within us. And when Jesus came, it wasn't to set up a government. It was to bring a reconciliation between us and God that would actually give us the peace that we have so longed for. Because all wars, all battles, every strain and stress that you have in your life comes out of an internal conflict where you are trying to put yourself on the throne instead of allowing God to be on the throne. So if you want to put yourself on the throne, then you have to carry the consequences of that. You have to live with the pressure of that. But when you put Jesus on the throne of your life, then it's his problem. Whatever's going on in your life is his problem and not yours. In Hebrew, the word for peace is shalom. And shalom doesn't mean an absence of conflict. Shalom is some bigger, beautiful word that encapsulates harmony and prosperity and fruitfulness and peace. It is a word that draws people together to live in unity. See, one thing the Bible recognizes is that the whole of creation is relational, not organizational. And if we try to solve relational problems with organizations, we get nowhere. We have to solve the problem of our lack of peace relationally. And that is primarily your relationship with God. That's why Jesus came. That's why he lived. And that is absolutely why he died. So that you could enter into a relationship with God where you put him on the throne of your heart, where you declare him both Lord and King of your life, and you hand over control of your life to him. That's what being a Christian is all about. It's not about being good. It's not about being perfect. It's not trying to justify yourself. It's not a self-help process. It is the submission of your will to God. See, when Jesus was born, the shepherds and the wise men all came, and they did one thing. They worshipped him. To worship is saying that someone has laid claim on your life. If you bow down before someone, you're putting yourself under their will. And the very first thing that humans did when they met this baby Jesus was to bow down before him. And yet so many of us struggle with that. We like to be in control. We like to be in charge. And for many of you, either now or in the past, you have been kind of leaders within the jobs that you've done. You're used to making decisions. You're used to being in control. You're used to looking strong. That's what you've done all your life. And it's perhaps the one thing that has stopped you from experiencing real peace. Because you're constantly trying to be in control of your life. Jesus is the Prince of Peace only if you put him in charge of your life. See, peace is always a gift. It is a gift from Jesus himself. It says this in John 14. Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid." See, Jesus doesn't give peace like the world gives, through organizations, through structures, through governments and parliaments and kings and queens. He gives peace through a relationship with your Heavenly Father in which you submit to his will. And in response to that, he gives you peace. How many of you are struggling to stay in control of your own life? You say that you're a Christian. You say that you believe in Jesus. But everything about your life is saying, I still want to be in charge. Sometimes you're putting Jesus on the throne. Sometimes you're taking him off and putting yourself back on. You cannot experience peace as you can truly experience it if you're looking to be in control. It just doesn't work. Because the moment you put yourself back in charge of your life, the trouble is still within you. The moment you are in charge of your life, you will always struggle with anxiety. You'll always struggle with stress. You'll always struggle with jealousy and anger. You'll always struggle with bitterness and pain. There will always be trouble in your heart if you're trying to be in control. See, when Jesus offers us peace, it is because he is the Prince of Peace and he is the only one who can give it. You cannot attain it. You cannot in any way find peace other than through Jesus. It is a gift from him to you, from him who is the Prince of Peace. And the only government he wants to set up is his government in your heart. So this Christmas, as you reflect on this little baby Jesus lying in a manger, wrapped in swaddling clothes and the whole thing that we talk about, remember, he is the only one who can give you peace. And we will talk a lot about peace over these next few days. The Archbishop will probably talk about peace. I think both Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn have both included the whole idea of peace in their Christmas statements. There'll be a lot of talk about peace, but no one has the answer to peace except Jesus. Are you tired of trying to make the best of your own life? Of trying to find peace yourself? Are you sick of the struggle that is constantly within you? Are you tired of constantly comparing yourselves with others who seem to have a bit more peace than you? Seem to be a bit more successful than you? Seem to have a bit more than you? Seem to be a bit happier than you? See, when you have peace, you don't compare yourself to anyone. Because when you have peace, you aren't just at peace with God, you are at peace with yourself. And that is a rare commodity these days. In an age when people compare themselves to each other all the time, the only way you can have peace with yourself is if you have peace with God. And so maybe you are tired of constantly comparing yourself to others. Maybe now is the time where you need to say to Jesus, I'm stepping off the throne of my life. I'm tired of trying to be in charge. I want you to sit on the throne of my heart. The battle for the human heart is won. Jesus, it's yours. Maybe that's a prayer you've never prayed today. Maybe it's a prayer that has always kind of been there at the back of your mind. You knew you should pray it. And even though you've been a believer, maybe even been a believer for a long time, you've never settled this one question. Who is truly in charge of my life? And there is only, well, there is probably more than one, but there is one good test to know who's in charge of your life. Do you have peace? And so let's do something a bit different today. I want you to just for a moment bow your heads in prayer. And I'm going to ask you to respond to Jesus in some way today. And maybe you know that he has not yet been on the throne of your heart. You've struggled against this, you've fought against it, you've tried to do things your own way, and you know it's getting you nowhere. I'm going to do a brave thing, and I'm going to ask you to do a brave thing. If you just want to put Jesus on the throne of your heart, I'm just going to ask you to stand so that I can pray for you. Just in your seats. To not worry about what anyone else is doing around you, next door to you, behind you, or in front of you. This is just between you and Jesus. The standing is the first step in saying, I'm no longer in control of my life. Jesus is. And so if that is you, if you want to put Jesus on the throne of your heart, to make him the Prince of Peace in your heart, let me encourage you to stand now.